And welcome everybody to the Huddle, KGUN9's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Parris. Pat, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jason. It's March Madness, and
that's what it is, Pat.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful, Jason. March Madness.
All right, so we got Arizona here in the Big 12 tournament. We're going to start with our Huddle poll question, and that is, how far do you think they're going in the Big 12 tourney? They're going to lose their first game, which is a quarterfinal game, possibly against Kansas. Maybe make it to the semis, win a game, but not the second one. Make it to the title game, probably lose to Houston, or do you think they're going to win it? Pat, I'm going B semifinals. What say you?
I said the same thing because I think a rematch with Kansas does not intimidate me as much as it may have had that same effect a couple of years ago. I think the fact that they just played them is a big benefit to Arizona. It's not senior night at in Lawrence at the field house there.
Kansas doesn't lose on senior night.
KU has won 42 straight senior nights. So that won't be a factor. Now, Kansas City is practically a home game for Kansas, obviously. But I really think that a rematch with Kansas might do Arizona some good.
All right, Pat, make the case for me here. This is a basketball team, University of Arizona, unranked, 11 losses, lost 5 of 8. Can't shoot at all. Can't guard the three. One of the starters looks lost in Del Orso. Make the case that this is a recipe for disaster going into the postseason here, especially the NCAA tournament.
There's a look again at the poll question. You can scan the QR code, go to kgun9.com, or you can vote on X as well. It doesn't look great. I'll be right along with you, and I say there's a lot more wrong with this basketball team right now than there's right with this basketball team. But remember one thing, there's a couple of things, but one thing is they're the third seed in the Big 12 in what's been a tough Big 12 season. Their schedule was unfairly backloaded, and they didn't handle it as well as we would have hoped, but they didn't fall apart either. It wasn't as if they got blown out. It doesn't look as if they embarrassed themselves. That Iowa State game that looked close, looked like maybe the things were not going to, that might be the first blowout loss, but they did make a game of it. That's one thing. They finished third in the Big 12. And the other thing I want to point to is their quad one record. And that's what gives me just a glimmer of hope. And the quad one record basically is when you're going against top teams, right? There's quad 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're undefeated against quad 4. They're undefeated against quad 3. They're undefeated against quad 2 teams. So what does that tell you, Jason? That tells you they never had a letdown. They never lost a game that they shouldn't have. They never had a bad loss. So they go 7-11 in quad 1 games. And that means that the 11 losses they had this year were all to quad 1 teams. And so you can say, are they not as good as those top 10 or 15 teams in the country? Maybe they're not, but they certainly were respectable, winning 7 of those 18 games and losing 11. It gives me hope that they're battle tested and that they're ready to come up against some challenges when they get to the tournament, the NCAA tournament later this month.
What do you think of the situation, or at least the possibility, I should say, of Arizona getting a 5 seed and possibly playing Xavier in the first round? Xavier would then probably be having to win a 12-12 game to get in there, and going up against Sean Miller, who was here for, I want to say 11 years, maybe? Was he the coach for 11 years? Something like that, 11 or 12 years. Yeah. How exciting would that be to go up against Xavier in the first round?
It'd be great. Yeah, it'd be a great storyline, and that's why I think it's going to happen as long as Arizona gets a 5 seed and Xavier is a 12 seed in the play-in. It looks like they got him. Joe Lunardi in bracketology has them playing Ohio State in a play-in game as a 12 seed, and then the winner of that would play Arizona. I think it'd be great.
Yeah,
for college basketball and for the national audience. It would certainly have a great storyline. I still get back to, though, if you look at the metrics, and metrics.
They're not getting a top seed with 11 losses.
Metrics are what they are. Arizona has a far more difficult schedule that they had to navigate through. They are far more ready to play a game like that than they've been the last few years under Tommy Lloyd, when the Pac-12 was not that great of a conference. We know that. I think they're ready to play better than I think you're giving them credit for.
You really think a 12, assuming they don't win the Big 12 tournament over Houston, okay, You think a 12-loss team is going to get a 5 seed in the tournament?
Absolutely, because of what the conference are coming out of. Yeah, absolutely. I think Joe Lenardi and the rest have already built that in, that they're probably only going to win maybe one, maybe not even one game in the Big 12 tournament, and that's why they're the 5 seed. So no, I don't think there's a problem with that. I think you get enamored with a lot of the East Coast people. They get enamored with the SEC and the Big 10, and then you look down at the Big 12 and you say, okay, maybe this year they're equal to the Big 10, or maybe they're one spot below the Big 10. Maybe they're only the third best team in the conference in the country, the Big 12. But it's a great conference, and it's got some great teams in Houston, Iowa State, Texas Tech. And Arizona split Texas Tech. They split with Iowa State. They only had one game against Houston, and they nearly won that game. So, yeah.
All right, let's talk about the lineup here a little bit. Anthony Del Orso really looks lost out there, Pat. A couple of travels against Kansas, I think it was, and struggles to get a shot off. Why not just take the pressure off him and have him come off the bench? KJ Lewis is playing starter minutes. KJ Lewis has a lot to contribute. I know he's been better off the bench than maybe when KJ Lewis was starting the year, but you want your best 5 out there. It just feels like one of your better hitters is hitting 7th in the baseball lineup, to make an analogy.
Yeah.
I think you take the pressure off Del Orso, have him come off the bench, try to get a couple threes off the bench, and then if he doesn't, he'll get another opportunity to come off the bench. But it shouldn't be a starter right now. It's just too much for him. Take the pressure off Del Orso.
And we don't know all the inner workings of what goes on at practice. We don't know what goes on when they get in Tommy's office, and part of my thought process is, you're right, but maybe it's the confidence factor. And if you take Del Orso and have him come off the bench, maybe he loses his confidence altogether. Now, look, he doesn't look like he has a lot of confidence anyway.
Yeah.
He's not taking a lot of shots, but it's a recipe that's worked at times for them. Maybe Tommy will surprise us and he'll switch things up, but I just don't see it. I don't see him making that change this late in the season. I think he figures he's got his 8-man rotation. He's going to stick with it.
Yeah, I think one thing that Tommy Lloyd has done really well here, and I've said this before, is the development of the big man.
Yep.
That's been phenomenal. But Pat, why does it feel like the other team always has open guys for threes?
It's the
How many
defense.
open
It's the
how many
defense.
open shots do I have to watch? It's like you have to sit there and pray that they miss these open shots. They're not even contested. What am I missing here? Why does the opposing team have so many open three-pointers?
Because guys aren't closing out. It still gets back to this defense work. This is the same defense Gonzaga runs. It's the same defense a lot of teams run when you have athleticism like Arizona has. The ability to double team, put pressure on the ball when you can, but you always have to, somebody on that weak side. If the ball's over on the left side, somebody on the right side has to come over and stay in the lane. Otherwise, you leave the lane wide open, right? Then if they kick the ball back around to the other side, that guy that was, protecting the rim needs to get back, and they're not getting back. It's the occasional breakdown by Arizona that's killing them, and it's kind of like, my reaction every time is, why does everybody hit threes against us? Teams that as collectively shoot 30% from 3 suddenly shoot 45% from 3 against us. Part of it's they're open, part of it's just, you're not getting some luck. You're getting bad luck.
All right, Pat, Tommy Lloyd made some news. Now, this is not the first time he's been a little critical of the atmosphere at McHale Center. A couple years ago, he said, "Where's the wrath of McHale?" Meaning when he was here as the assistant in Gonzaga, and the opposing crowd was really rowdy. He doesn't feel like that's the case at Arizona. A little surprised by that. Definitely the student section's been rowdy, a little bit too rowdy at times, if you know, with some of the comments they've made. But he goes to Kansas for senior day, and he compliments Kansas's senior day like crazy, implying that there's something not right with the McHale Center atmosphere. I think we've got some sound on that we're going to play right now. It was basically after senior day at Kansas, Arizona loses, and Tommy Lloyd is critical, and he says, what an incredible.
I'm an Arizona guy. I'm an Arizona guy, and I love Arizona, but this is not an indictment on our fans, but we got work to do. There's a gap. There's a gap between Kansas and Iowa State in these game day atmospheres and their fan support. I mean, it was awesome today and crazy. I mean, I'm just out there listening to their senior speeches. I wasn't listening. I had to speak on the radio, but 90% of the fans are still there 20 minutes after listening to the senior speeches. I mean, it's pretty special.
What is the McHale Center missing? I see in the pregame, I see this light show. I see a video scoreboard. Uh, uh, you and I think Tommy Lloyd's saying there aren't enough traditions other than the fans standing before the made basket by the other team at the end of at each half. Well, what is missing from the McHale Center atmosphere? It seems fine to me, Pat.
Well, we've seen, you and I have been around long enough. We've seen McHale get extremely loud, and it is a tough place for opponents to come play. But I think he said Kansas and Iowa State. You're also talking about buildings that are even much older than McHale, and they've established things that they do there that Arizona fans, let's be honest, Arizona basketball really didn't exist. No offense to Freddie Snowden. It didn't really exist until Lute Olson showed up and started winning, right? And these two programs, Iowa State and Kansas, go back decades earlier, half a century earlier in Kansas's, when it comes to Kansas. And so there are certain things they do there that, Arizona just hasn't caught up to or gotten the tradition of decades and decades. But I think part of the problem, Jason, is always, and we've made this notation before, is you've got the long time alumni with all of the money and the stature and the notoriety in Tucson sitting way down low, and it just takes away from some of the raucous atmosphere of Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence, Kansas, or Hilton Coliseum in Ames, Iowa. There isn't that in your face, on top of you intimidation that other places have. That's part of it. And then my other part is, and Jason's a person that has had season tickets, or at least half season tickets. I can't go every night, so we get a half season ticket package. We get surveys after every game, and my biggest takeaway a lot of times is, Jason, the moment that Arizona has that momentum, and the other team calls a timeout or whatever, and they play that high pumping music for about 20 seconds, and then hey, it's time for the Casino del Sol dice roll. Hey, how about these students on the trike? They're going to try to race around, and it just loses all the momentum. And I don't know what the answer is. You've got to have sponsors. You've got to have those in-game stuff. But, man, it just ruins the atmosphere. It just stops the momentum in its tracks. And it doesn't make for the other team unable to communicate in the huddle. When a kid's
there is something
shoot
there, because he kind of doubled down on it today. And do we need an ooh-ah man junior? For those who aren't remember, there was somebody named the ooh-ah man, and he would come in the second half during a timeout when the Wildcats really needed a boost and charge up the fans, and everybody loved it. Do they need, I think that's kind of the stuff he's talking about. I don't know where that comes from. And I think, Pat, the other issue with that is that has to be almost done organically, or no?
It has to be.
Because you criticized Jed Fish in year one when he wanted to, have the Kenny Chesney song at the end of the third quarter and do this tradition and that one. And you said, you can't just make this up. It's got to just happen.
No, it does. It does just naturally have to happen. And producer Ryan said the students make a hand dance gesture. No, that's actually what is great about McHale is the gesture of the.
Yeah, I know
their
that
thing, and this gets the whole crowd going. It started with the students and the band, and it's become a tradition. And they need more of that, and that grows organically. It doesn't. You can't just say, "Hey, there's a song that mentions Tucson in it. Let's play it at the end of the third quarter going into the fourth." It doesn't, it's not what you do. It has to organically happen. And if that means, I saw a couple things, reorganizing where people sit. It might mess, make angry fans of those who have the high dollar seats. But is there a way, you have to think of all this stuff. Is there a way to move the fans around so you get more students impacting the game in that sense? Is there
That's what Billy Joel does. He doesn't sell the first row of his concerts, and then because he doesn't want the corporate people who aren't into his songs on the first row.
That's right.
So he brings down people from the upper deck into the first row for his concert.
So, other ways to do it would be, I saw this, I believe it was an Instagram post or an X post. Somebody showed, the early days, the 80s, 90s, or it was probably the 90s of McHale, of the lighting at McHale. And back in the 90s and the 80s, you could see the entire arena was lit up. So the student sections, the players, the opposing team could see the entire student section behind them lit up when they were trying to shoot the ball. Well, now they bring the lights all the way down and only the court is lit up, right? So only the first couple of rows of fans, or even perceived when you're looking at a shooting background. So maybe it's stop making the shooting background so easy for the opposing fans and brighten up the light. I mean, just there's things like that you can think of anyway.
All right, let's spend a minute here on Bobby Hurley, ASU basketball coach, who's coming back next year. I'm glad to see it. I think we're like this for different reasons. You don't think he's a good coach. I think he deserves it to come back.
Really?
This guy coaches his brains
you
out.
You want me to defend Arizona, who's 20-11 with 11 quad one losses, and then you're going to say that Bobby Hurley deserves
this was
to
a
come
young
back.
team with injuries.
You can go ahead, keep going.
A young team
enough.
with injuries.
So that's this year. What about the 9 previous years?
Oh, if they were ranked number 1 in the country a few years back.
And
was it
played
19?
out like nobody's business. Go ahead.
When has ASU ever been ranked number 1?
When has U of A been ranked number 1?
No. ASU. I believe ASU got to a number 1 ranking and then lost at McHale Center, or they were very close to it. No, he's had some good years. It's never really been an historically strong program, and he brought in some really good recruits this past year. And I think he should get a second year to see it through.
4-16 in the new conference is worth bringing a guy back, huh? All right.
Yeah, listen, this changes from year to year. And that's the other point I wanted to make is he can be on the last year of his contract. It's okay. Many of these players aren't really thinking multi-years in advance. It's not like they're going for 4 years. They're going to where the highest bidder is, and he could have a good year and get a contract extension.
So if I'm recruiting, if say you're Bobby Hurley and you're making that argument.
Well, let me put it the other way. If I'm a basketball player and I'm thinking about going to ASU, I would not be deterred at all by a coach on the last year of his contract.
When you get the phone call from,
listen, let's go win some games here. I don't have any issue with it.
Except that if you're that player and I'm another team from, say, Arizona or
everybody
UCLA
does things to try to recruit against you.
You can easily shoot that down. You want to go play for a coach who's got 4 wins in the Big 12 and only has 1 year left on his contract, and they're talking about buying him out, but they can't afford to buy him out, so that's why he's coming back. Another, you can spin that all day. But I'm like Richard Jefferson. Bring him back. He's 4-17 lifetime as ASU's head coach against Arizona. Bring him back. I like that winning percentage. 7-14 Arizona is against Bobby Hurley. So bring him back.
That has not been an historically strong program. You know that. He
was brought in to make it a historically strong program, and there have not been the results that they've
been very scrappy this year, Pat. Very scrappy for a team that's been young
great.
And hurt.
Just like him.
They came into McHale and scored 100 points. They scored 100
and they
points
still
in
lost.
Center.
So what would you rather do, Jason? Score 100 points and still lose by they lose by 15? What was the final?
So I think it was 113-100.
Okay, so would you rather be the team that scores 100 and loses by 13, or the team that scores 113?
By the way, that's another problem with Arizona this year. 2 times they've given up 100 points.
No, I agree. That defense, they've got to be better, and they've shown moments. And then they've shown moments where they can't defend.
Do you feel like it's been 3 chapters to the season the way I feel like it? Like chapter 1, they go 4-5. Then they go to the Big 12. They reel off 13 of 14 wins.
Yep.
And then they finish off 3-5, losing 5 of their last 8. It's almost been like 3 chapters to the season. Does that make any sense to you?
That makes total sense to me. And I thought of it the same way. I was looking at the schedule the other day and thinking, we said this when they were in the midst of that 13 wins out of 14 games. We were looking at this behemoth of a schedule to close out the year, and we said, uh-oh. And unfortunately, it worked out exactly like we feared. And the only thing you can hang your hat on is they played a lot of great teams, and they had a not so great a success. And you hope that made them better and that they'll figure something out over the next couple of weeks.
They have one win they shouldn't have had against Iowa State and one loss they shouldn't have had against BYU. Yeah, obviously they got lucky with the Iowa State game. Okay, come on. And they got the bad call went against them at BYU.
So there's quad one wins and
I
losses.
think the one that stings the most still is the UCLA game.
Yeah,
that's the game they should have won and kind of choked at the end.
Yeah,
to me, that's if it's what the loss that stings the most. I think is that one. I would say.
I think the BYU one is the one that you're at home. You got to take care of business, and that didn't work out. Whether you say the official made the bad call or not, they didn't play well defensively in that game. But you know what? Nobody's playing well against BYU defensively. There it is. Thank you, Ryan. You see that, Jason? The point is, when you're a shooter, right, you want that perfect background, right? And what we've done at McHale now is we've darkened it down so much that it's like the batter's eye in baseball, you know, that one shade back there. We've made that dark shade. You don't see the fans waving back there, you know, not nearly as much as you did when it would look like that.
Yeah.
So that's one area you could change. I'm not saying brighten it that much, but maybe the bottom, you know, bowl, the lower bowl gets lit up just a little bit more in the student section, so you can see some waving going on back there. Make it tough for those 3-point shooters.
Yeah. Well, there's a committee or some type of fan forum.
There is.
Yeah. Try to get that. So,
yep.
You know, if that's really an issue, I think the issue is it's just not a bunch of great shooters. You know, they're good at many things, driving to the basket, and I think it's a good rebounding team, especially the guards rebound.
Great rebounding team. It's a great rebounding team. It's a
Yeah,
great free throw shooting team.
Yeah,
Why they can't hit threes?
Sure.
Why they can't hit threes? I don't know.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though, Jason. What we've learned about Tommy Lloyd is every year he is terrific at evaluating where his team is and where they need to be, and he has made changes to his roster every year thanks to the portal. And you know, what was the number one thing the last couple of years? They got to get tougher. Well, they got a lot tougher, but now they need some shooters, and they thought they had one in Del Orso, and he just has not materialized. And so I think that's going to be an area of emphasis, is get a shooter or two that you can count on when you need a three, you know, a guy that hits 45% from three, not just 25%.
Before we finish up here with a poll question, every time I watch a game on television, the announcer says the same thing. Toby Awaka plays under the rim. What the heck does that mean? And then this past time, it's like, remember Kylan Boswell last 2 years, was it 2 years ago or last year, when every single time he played, they said 2 years ago, every single time they played, said he's 17. The announcer every single time. Well, here it is this year. Every single time I turn on the game, they say that's Toby Awaka. He plays underneath the rim. Have you heard that?
I hadn't really. It didn't really sink in until you just said that, but they do say that a lot.
Well, every time.
And
then this but we don't mean that as a disparaging way.
But
that's
is
just
it
how
though?
he carves out his rebounds?
Well, yeah, but you know, doesn't every big guy play under the rim?
I think they're trying to say he's not a big jumper for rebounds. I guess he more muscles people underneath. I don't know. Listen, you don't have to be all things to everybody. If you could rebound that way, then rebound that way. You know, if you could be a pocket passer, you don't need to scramble. There's different ways to get the job done. Let's finish it up with our Huddle poll question here. How far do you think Arizona basketball is going in the Big 12 tournament? Are they going to lose their first quarterfinal? Oh boy, they lose their first quarterfinal game. A lot of people think so.
Yep.
And some people think the semis, runner up, and boy, wow. I would have thought for an Arizona audience would see a little bit more runners up and champions. But I think they've seen too many L's from this team this year.
Here's the thing. This is not the Pac-12. This is not the Pac-12. You know, Arizona could have a similar record at 12-11 in the Pac-12, and you still have a chance to win the Pac-12 championship. This is the Big 12 now. And when you've got the likes of Houston, Texas Tech, and Iowa State and Kansas all to get past, that's a tough road. I agree. I've got semifinals.
Yeah. That's what I had too. All right. This has been
anything more is gravy, though. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I wouldn't take it. It's just I'm not counting on it.
We'll be talking about the bracket and Arizona's bracket next week for sure, with Selection Sunday approaching. So looking forward to that. For our producer Ryan McClure and Pat Parris, I'm Jason Barr. This has been the Huddle KGUT9 streaming sports talk show. Looking forward to being back here next Tuesday and talking about the tournament and Arizona's bracket. Until then, we'll see you next time.